So,
Oh, there it is. Yeah, I see.
thank you. And I think as far as, just being able to post the recordings, does Pua, does she just take the recordings from the meetings like this and post them? Is that what she's doing, or is she actually filming?
She'll film them, and I don't know that part of it at all. She's wonderful. She just
Kate seemed familiar with her
been having
reaction.
a really busy 2 years doing it like this. But she'll put it on YouTube. It's usually on YouTube on the town website the next morning. And she'll also put it on channel 79 at certain times. There's, she has a certain schedule, I guess. And she'll film as many as she can.
If I can add in here, it came up in our commission meeting several months ago, I guess now, because we were discussing minutes and how detailed they should be. And coming from a historic point of view or historian's point of view, I said, well, it helps to have them as detailed as possible, because that's where you find out what really has gone on in meetings. And it's terrible to look at old minutes and find there's been no recording of any discussion or anything. And somebody said, well, they're all put over in the library anyway. Pua's things are put in the library. Well, I went looking and the library doesn't have them, or has just a very few of them. So I asked Pua, and she said, no, they stopped doing that quite a while ago. And they put them on YouTube now, but YouTube does not keep them either. So these recordings are not kept permanently at all.
Well,
goes back to the keeping minutes that are more detailed than just we met.
that's up to each board and commission. You don't have to do anything other than record who is there, the date and time and where you are at the meeting, and any motions that were made. And then from there, you can make it as detailed or as simple as you want. That's really up to you. You're all volunteers, so it's not a professional thing, but you can do the best you can.
Barbara, if I can interject on that point, and then we'll move along. I did talk to Pua on the questions you had raised. I do have a good amount of information on that. Had intended to bring that up when we had Tommy on the agenda next month, just to inform the rest of the commission of what I found out and what you've now found out, and how we want to adjust, if at all. We can have a discussion on that. Any other questions for Stephanie on the subcommittees before we move on to the second part of her discussion? Not seeing any other questions. Just to lead into the second part, Stephanie will talk about the West River Watershed Coalition. Mentioned that there are some new faces here, and those gentlemen all are from the Woodbridge Park Association, the Woodbridge Land Trust, who will be involved in the second part of our second presentation today. And just like those two organizations, we share elements of our goals in common with the West River Watershed Coalition. So I thought it would be good to hear from Stephanie and for us to learn about the coalition and see how we can support each other going forward. And I'm sort of glad that Chris and Bryan are on. I'm not sure how familiar you are with the Watershed Coalition, but it's maybe a good sharing opportunity.
We're members of the coalition.
Yeah, great.
Land Trust.
And we appreciate each and every one of you. Just so that
and I'm going to try to put up the brochure. And Stephanie, if you want me to flip pages, let me know. I need to go back and hold on. I guess Stephanie, you can start. I'll figure this out while you talk.
Give you a little information about it.
Yeah.
The mission of the West River Coalition is to connect the West River to the parks, neighborhoods, and the 5 towns in its watershed. That would be Bethany, Woodbridge, Hamden, New Haven, and West Haven. The West River flows through these towns and out to Long Island Sound, so it is really important that we protect and improve the health of our river for all of us. The watershed is about 25 miles in length, and there's 75,000 people that live within this watershed. We're always looking for new members and new ideas. All are welcome to join our meetings. And our meetings are the third Wednesday of every month and normally held at the New Haven Housing Authority at 333 Sherman Avenue in New Haven. We usually have about 20, 25 people in attendance from all, we have probably over 35, 40 organizations that are involved with the West River Coalition. And we've been meeting via Zoom these last few years and will continue to do so as long as we're required to. But other than that, we would meet in New Haven on Sherman Avenue. It's a wonderful group of volunteers, and they've all worked tirelessly to clear the trails along the river. So they've supported habitat restoration, guided many walks through the towns and watershed trails. And we have a listing that I can send you of all the walks that they're going to do this year. There's 9 more walks that they'll do this year, eventually covering the whole trail all the way from Bethany to West Haven and out to the Sound. They sponsored river cleanups. They post trail signs, and they've just they're out there every weekend clearing trails. They're unbelievable, unbelievable group of people. And we do have 9 walks already scheduled for this year, and I can provide you with a list if you're interested. They state DEP has designated us Greenway, Connecticut Greenway, and I'm on the steering committee. I'll help with anything that you think that you would like to find out about our organization. But that's basically it.
Stephanie, would you just talk a little bit mechanically about how the organization works? Just what's the nature of the coalition and what's the role of Woodbridge in the coalition?
Well, we work together with all the other towns. Each town has been involved in creating the Greenway and working on the trails. And, you know, we have developed access to the river and parks along the river, and they've developed convenient, safe access to the river and addressed pollution. They've gone through the whole area over and over again. We've now started to be able to get grants from the federal government, the state, different organizations we did get a big grant to take out the Pond Lily Dam a while back, but now we have a grant to down in Westville to work on the sides of the river, to stabilize the sides of the river down in the Westville area. And the Regional Water Authority has given us $1,000 a year. So our group has gone out and bought some equipment, some chainsaws and different, implements to cut down some of the, open up some of the trailways.
Hopefully I have shared the screen with the brochure from the West River Coalition. And as you can see on the map, it's probably maybe small on your screens, but the Woodbridge part of the watershed, and I think what this map shows is the watershed, therefore it's the coalition around the West River watershed, and the watershed is shown. The Woodbridge comprises about 1/3 of the geography of the watershed. And my understanding is, Stephanie, that the town itself has made some sort of endorsement of the or agreed to support the coalition. How I'm not quite sure.
Yes,
those
they
pieces.
have. Well, they supported us when we were applying for the Greenway, and all the towns did. It didn't cost the towns anything, but it gave us a little more oomph to get grants and to help us out. So all of the towns signed on to it, and our town did. And so now we're designated by the state of Connecticut as a Greenway, so that protects us a little more. And they're really all volunteers, just like you are. And they work very hard they're out there every week. They're showing trails, and they're doing a lot of work over there. In each town, it didn't matter what town they're in, what town they live in, they're whatever town needs.
People help each other.
They're going to, and they're helping each other. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Questions for Stephanie on the coalition?
I have one. What are the projects for this year?
Well, the projects for this year, we just we ordered 100 blaze trail signs, little 3x5 signs there's 100 of those. They're going to be putting those up all along the trail system. And they're looking to do some other signs for different areas in the towns, in the 5 towns that who had a grist mill, or, there was different parts of the town had interesting facts, and they've had some really beautiful signs made up. I think they're going to continue with that, and they're going to continue cleaning the trails. There's a lot to do. There really is a lot to do. So hopefully we'll be working on that.
Excellent.
Stephanie mentioned that the coalition is sponsoring some walks or conducting some walks. There is a walk scheduled for the Bishop Estates property.
April 16th. That's April 16th.
At 10 a.m. And it might be a good chance if you have the opportunity to join that walk. And the walks are usually a couple miles, is from my take on it. Stephanie, correct me if I'm wrong,
Yes,
but it might be a good chance to meet some members of the coalition. The following walk, I think, would be an interesting one for people, because it will be, and it's in May. I don't have the date, but it is a walk.
That's May 14th, Tim. That's May 14th.
And that is a walk along some very nice trails that were recently constructed in the past Pond Lily Avenue, down through the back of Whaley Avenue, where the West River runs, that you never think about because you can't see it. But it's a very, I've walked it. It's a very nice trail, and those are just good opportunities to meet some of the people on the coalition. And then, Stephanie, we have just a couple minutes, but if you wanted to, I was going to bring up a couple pictures, because we do have interest here in this group.
Yes. Diana has her hand raised.
Oh, Diane, sorry, Diane. Go. I was trying to look for the next sharing piece, so I missed you, Diane. Go ahead, right ahead.
Yeah, it's okay. If you prefer to me that I just jump in, I'll do that. But I'm just raising my hand out of
I think
classroom ethicette.
We're well behaved usually, so just jump in.
Okay, no problem. Stephanie, I was just going to mention that I'm a project wet instructor, which is water conservation education. In the state of Connecticut, in DEEP, they have a whole environmental education program where they can teach other folks who are interested in becoming like project wet instructors. And that can have an element of like water education courses that you can offer to the community. And you can also offer to like professional development for teachers. So if there's any interest in like, water outreach activities or education, I'd be happy to either connect to the right people or, volunteer what time I have.
That'd be wonderful. That'd be wonderful. If you would just send me some information about that, I can pass it along and we can discuss it at our next meeting. If you're available, I know you're very busy, but if you're available, you might want to be able to check in with us. We meet the third Wednesday of every month. Right now, we're still meeting on Zoom. I'm not sure what this new month is going to bring. Hopefully, we'll get to meet in person one day again soon, but that'd be great. That's a great idea. Thank you.
So just in the last minute here, Stephanie, I'd be remiss if I didn't share, because this group has an interest in the Merritt Avenue development, proposed subdivision, that you provided us with some pictures that I've shared with the group. And this one was a particular interest as this is the entrance, this is Merritt Avenue in the brick building right in front. I think most of the commission members would recognize. And Stephanie, I'll let you comment.
Litchfield Turnpike. It's the corner of Litchfield Turnpike and Merritt Avenue. Yeah.
And yeah, and I think you sent a few others and this is the bridge.
The Merritt Avenue Bridge. The West River goes over its banks in Woodbridge a few times a year now. It's going into people's homes. It's decimating some people's homes. We've had a lot of problems with the water over the years. There was a major flood in 1982, and it started, as far as I know, I was there in 1982, so I remember that one. But it went over its banks twice this past year, once in July and once in September. So we're very concerned about the area, and we're hoping. The Army Corps of Engineers came out 2 years ago now with Rosa DeLauro's office, and they've been trying to get us funding to dredge Knowles Pond and to deepen the West River Channel to alleviate some of the flooding. We did take out, the West River Coalition was involved in taking out the Pond Lily Dam, which we thought would help, and it helped a little bit, but with the amount of rain that we've been getting over the years, is just more and more. That's the backyard of Miles Avenue, in between Litchfield Turnpike and Merritt Avenue and Miles Avenue. That was when the river went over its banks, I think, and I'm not sure the date on there. But like I said, it goes over its banks often. And a lot of the people have had a lot of problems. The flood insurance isn't covering them anymore. They're dropping them because they've made 3 claims in 30 years. There's a lot of sadness there. So we're trying to get some monies. Hopefully, with the federal monies that are coming out, we'll be able to get some monies. But now there's a 28 apartment subdivision going at the end of Merritt Avenue, in between the Merritt Parkway or the Wilbur Cross Parkway and the Merritt Avenue. And it borders almost on the West River. So we're worried about that.
Is there any consideration to retreat in that area?
Say that again, I'm sorry. Is there any?
I guess I'm calling it retreat because I'm so used to dealing with like coastal flooding issues, but is there any conversation about relocation?
Relocation would be
out of that area. Yeah, deconstruction.
Yeah, there is one house that apparently is going to be knocked down, but that has not happened yet. There's a few other houses that are in really poor shape. I've been down there. Their foundations are all cracked. There's water running through their basements all the time.
And I believe there's some state funding and there's some federal funding to help.
That's what we're hoping for. We've been told that there is. I spoke to the Army Corps of Engineers a few months ago, and they are shorthanded, so they're not sure when they can get out there because they have to do another survey. We've had 4 surveys done over the years, but they have to update the survey from 2013, I believe we had a survey from the Army Corps, and we just have to wait and see. I've been calling, Beth has been calling the state and the Army Corps every month. Yeah.
So just to close this off, the Merritt Avenue subdivision is it's a small piece. It's the problem with the river flooding is a bigger issue. It covers a larger area.
Every piece of property that you pave or you build on creates an issue, and so it all has to probably be dealt with.
Right. And I think that the subdivision has just raised it once again to the forefront.
And these houses,
to get
you know,
solved.
these are 2-family houses that are very large on each lot. The lots are only 40 by 100. So that there's 28 houses going in on a 40 by 100 lot of each one is on a 40 by 100 lot, which is a small lot, very small lot. So
The neighbors
Stephanie-
were complaining about flooding just for the very little groundwork there or excavation that had been done. They were complaining that it's brought water into their yards and into their basements with just the little amount of work that's been done already.
yeah, and they said they are not going to put basements into these new houses because of the wet, you know, the wet area. The water table is very high there.
Yeah.
You know,
I'm afraid we're going to have to leave this at this point and move along. Stephanie,
okay.
I know you could probably, I know you can talk on this one for a while. It's important. You've been dealing with it for a lot of years. If you look at the pictures, these pictures go back quite a few years. So it's something that, though, even as a commission, I think we need to be aware of and see
Well, I'm very happy that the
perhaps.
wall went down there. I really am very happy that people know about it now
Yeah.
and know, you know,
Mm.
the issues. I don't think many people in town knew, you know, the problems that are going on down there.
And that's why I wanted to give you a chance to come
Tim, is
before.
there specific follow-up that the committee should do or the commission should do?
I think we can, we could table that till our discussion on Merritt Avenue later in the agenda, Diana.
Okay,
Because
Thanks.
we are sort of over time now.
Yeah.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay,
If you have any
Um,
questions, give me a call.
okay.
Thank
And
you.
with that, I'm glad to welcome the members of the Park Association and the Land Trust who have joined us tonight. I'll let them introduce themselves, and they're going to talk to us again about their recent proposal to the Board of Selectmen. And with that, I'm going to turn it over either to Bryan or Chris. I'll throw it out and either one. And I'll ask Chris Keevil or ask Kate, do we need to do anything special to have Chris Keevil be able to share in just a minute? Or will he just be able to grab that?
Chris, you should be all set, right? You see the green button?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Thanks. All right. So Bryan or Chris
Excellent.
Dickerson,
Okay,
go ahead.
Chris, I'll start if you want. First off, it's a pleasure being here with you at your meeting. And Steph, I just want to applaud you for the work that you're doing with the West River Watershed Coalition. The Land Trust is a member of this organization. And I think it's a wonderful segue to this, what we're having a discussion now about, because the West River Watershed Coalition is a regional conservation partnership, which means it's a group of like-minded environmental conservation organizations throughout our whole community working together. And that is something just like the South Central Regional Land Conservation Alliance, another regional conservation partnership where we all work together. So I'll be very brief. The Woodbridge Land Trust is proud to partner with the Woodbridge Park Association to protect one of our town's most valuable open space parcels. We also, the Land Trust, is looking forward to working and collaborating with the Woodbridge Conservation Commission on future projects that will conserve, preserve, and protect our town's natural resources for both the benefit of our residents and for future generations. So it's very important that we work together. And one of the most outstanding aspects of this is that we get to work closely with the Park Association. And we look forward to working with the Conservation Commission as well. So Chris Dickerson, you can introduce the Park Association as well.
Well, thank you, Bryan, and I appreciate the fact that we're able to work together as partners to help protect one of the most beautiful pieces of property, a jewel of our town. The Woodbridge Park Association has been a private land owning entity in Woodbridge for over 90 years. And we have on occasion partnered with entities like the Woodbridge Land Trust to protect vital open space parcels in town. And we're happy and excited to be able to join together and really help to preserve this beautiful piece of property that needs to be protected. So thank you, Tim, for inviting us, and we'll let Chris Keevil take over and give you our presentation.
Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me okay?
It's good.
Yes, good, thanks. And Tim and the Conservation Commission, thank you very much for giving us some time before we can share materials that have been put together by the Woodbridge Park Association and the Woodbridge Land Trust in order to share our perspective on the benefits of maintaining the open space at the Woodbridge Country Club and the proposal that was put forth to the town. And I know that all of you received the PowerPoint materials ahead of this meeting, so we'll move through fairly efficiently, but we wanted to have the opportunity to highlight what we brought here. So the materials then I'll be sharing on screen, and just move things around on my screen a little bit. I'm assuming everyone can see that. Yes, good.
Good, yes.
So good. And that's probably gone away for a moment, then it's back. Good. So the in stepping this through, first of all, just to be clear that this has been developed by the Woodbridge Land Trust and the Woodbridge Park Association. It was a joint committee of the two that worked together with multiple people putting together thoughts and ideas in order to assemble these materials. And we have a set of contents here that goes through the proposal that was brought forth to the town, and then touch on the history, the land, benefits, financial impact, and then summing it all up. The offer to the town from the Woodbridge Land Trust and the Woodbridge Park Association was made on November 20th of this past year, and it was submitted to propose a grant of conservation restriction on the former country club for $250,000, as well as a 10-acre development parcel that would not be under that restriction, that could include the clubhouse, tennis courts, could include other buildings, and however the town might want to use that. As you know, the town voted that down by the Board of Selectmen. We have been looking to see if there might be an opportunity to bring this back in the future. You can see the copy of the letter there on the right. And then this map went along with that proposal. It was a second page, which shows the map of the about 150 acres of the property, with 10 acres set aside in the lower right, shown in pink, which would be not part of the easement. And just an explanation of what a conservation restriction actually means, it simply limits the land to preserve its conservation value. It can be owned, it can be sold, it can be used for a variety of purposes. Each deed of conservation restriction is unique and designed specifically for that property. It would allow for the things of maintenance of agricultural soils, for walking trails, and it would also allow for an arrangement which we see in other places in town. The Sorrow Farm, the Ciarleglio Athletic Fields, Eldersley, Town Line Farm, all are other examples of conservation easements in town which have worked well and have been done in concert with other owners.
Would the property be available,
property?
Chris, would the property be available for recreational uses if there was conservation easement on it?
Yeah, it would be certainly available for recreational uses and could be used for a variety of purposes, and that could all be written into the actual agreement for the conservation easement. And so the conservation easement isn't a fixed formula, but it can be put together so that it really meets the needs of the people of the town.
Would this town still own the property, or would the ownership change?
The town would still own the property and would be able to do with it what it would choose. The conservation easement would simply designate certain uses that would not be allowed in order to maintain the open space.
May I ask a question too, just to confirm that this is a perpetual conservation easement? Forever?
Yes, the conservation easement typically is a perpetual easement. That's the way they typically work.
Thank you.
And what I'm going to propose is that I step through and present as I can, moving through pretty quickly, And then I think let's have questions at the end just to make sure we touch on all the points.
Great suggestion, Chris. Thank you.
So this is a mock-up of the land. You can see the black rectangles as the 145 dwellings, which would be tightly spaced across the land. The green area is actually, would be deeded to the town, but it's impervious rocky land. It's not really suited for any recreational purposes. The public trails, which are the dark green, would be going through the backyards of all of these houses. And we've found with other conservation easements like this in town, such as the one between Pease Road and near Pease Road School, that you end up with a lot of encroachment because of the tightness of the property and the trails. The history of the land we found interesting. Roger Sherman owned it from 1766 to 1773. He was the only person who signed all of the founding documents of the country. He served in the Connecticut State Legislature. And on the next page, we see how there was a rich history of ownership with Captain John Beecher, after which there's things named in our town as well for. And it was then closed, developed as a golf course in 1931, closed during World War II. And then after the war, it was financed by 100 men who actually wanted to establish a country club that would be open to all, with concerns that at the time Jews were not allowed to be a part of the other country clubs in the area. So it was a country club that was very much oriented toward open access and equity for all people. It's also notable that the Amity and Woodbridge Historical Society has established a subcommittee to research the Sherman Historical Farm, and the Sherman Historical Society in Sherman, Connecticut is looking at a Roger Sherman Trail through the state, which could very well include this. So the property has real possibilities for historic representation. The town purchased the property in 2009, and you can see the letter on the right-hand side. It was written by Ed Sheehy, the first selectman of Woodbridge at the time. And you can see the yellow highlighted text that the Board of Selectmen has analyzed it and seen the importance of maintaining the property as open space. And he talks about it being irresponsible for the board to allow the property to fall into the hands of developers. Sheehy was elected by a wide margin, which in part was an endorsement for this position. There's also been other attempts to develop the property. In 2011, a Toll Brothers proposal was defeated 2-1 by townspeople. 2016, another Toll Brothers proposal was abandoned due to strong opposition. In 2020, a proposal by Brian St. Pierre and Insight was also abandoned in terms of town opposition. This is an aerial photograph of the property. The historic site of the farmhouse is in the upper left. There's actually kind of a square plot there with plantings from the old town farmhouse and could be recognized historically. The land has great wonder to it. It has ecological functions of biodiversity, healthy ecological function. It's a source of food and water for wildlife, breeding grounds, biodiversity, and contributes to stormwater runoff, soil erosion, and flooding reduction, which interestingly, given its watershed position, also contributes to things like flooding of the rivers downstream from it. Successional habitats are where fields are growing up and provide grasses and flowering shrubs and various different things that are actually a priority for the state. There's very little of this kind of land available, and the state is actually incentivizing the establishment and maintenance of these kind of natural communities. Therefore, we'd be contributing to state objectives through this. There's also ecotones there, which are where there are transitions between field, water, and woodlands, and it supports greater diversity of life and plant life, wildlife, adds beauty, and it also sequesters carbon. Notably, this land is now pulling carbon out of the atmosphere. If it was a residential development, it would be putting carbon into the atmosphere and contributing to global warming and climate degradation. The land also supports pollinators, and what may look like weeds and overgrowth is actually tremendously important to our ecology, supporting bees, butterflies, and other insects. And there's an alarming lack of dropping of pollinators and supporting species in the Northeast, and we would be helping to stem that tide through the preservation of the land. It has prime farmland soils on the property. And you can see in the green, which is prime farmland soils designated by the federal government as being important for national security and short range and long range needs for food and fiber, as well as the yellow, which are farmland soils designated by the state of Connecticut. And so this is an important asset of the state of Woodbridge, and we've lost much of this in Woodbridge, and this is the one last large property that could be preserved with these kind of farmland soils. If you also look at the plan of conservation and development, which is developed every 10 years and elected by the Board of Selectmen after town commentary. And so this is supported by vote by the Board of Selectmen, and it provides both a long-term vision and a short and midterm roadmap for decision-making. And you can see on the following page then a series of quotes from it. On page 73, in this plan of conservation and development voted in by the Board of Selectmen, the quality of life will be enhanced by the continued protection and conservation of these resources of open space. Farmland soils are an irreplaceable asset. The public interest and it is in the preservation of farmland, forest land, and open space, and it's also critical to preserve these as well as historic farms. All of that taken directly from quoting from the plan. Steph talked about the Greenway, which has also been an interest to the Woodbridge Land Trust, and I think people on this commission as well. As we understand it, there's been work to try to create a perimeter of a greenway around the town. You can see the historic Roger Sherman Farm in the lower right and how it connects other greenways as you go around. Many people, as we know, have settled in Woodbridge because of its rural character, and it's one of the most important attractors to the town. And so sustaining this as open space would continue to support and contribute to that greenway. The state of Connecticut also has a green plan developed for the Department of Energy and Environmental Protection. There's a goal in that plan of conserving 21% of Connecticut's land base as open space by 2023. This plan was developed some years ago, and they've been trying to get to that goal. Many towns don't have available open space to conserve. Woodbridge, by protecting this space, would be helping out in this statewide green plan. There's another 163,000 acres that must be acquired and protected in order to meet the plan as put forward by the state. Open space provides a number of benefits, as I know you all are aware of, but if you look at a study of health benefits across 13 towns in New Haven County, there was an added avoided healthcare cost of $37 million, a 40% reduction, depending on whether you were in a rural location or an urban location. This comes out of a study done by Spencer Meyer and the Highstead Foundation. The environmental quality is enhanced, fields and stands of trees with a whole series of benefits. Tax revenues actually increase in properties that are close to open space. And so therefore, there's a tax benefit that arises from open space that acquires to other properties in the town. And then the beauty, ways to calm the soul, find inspiration, and bring perspective to life, and is beneficial in a wide array of areas. And recent studies show that the time in nature reduces stress and raises self-esteem. And that's been shown actually through many studies. And so we actually contribute to the benefits of life in many ways through open space. Neighbors can connect and enjoy the open place, which is actually wonderful for community building. I think we saw something like 21 people out there sledding a little earlier in the winter. And therefore we end up with a great deal of benefits from the land. In this last section, we want to lay out the financial impact of open space versus residential development. If you look at a study done by the Office of the State Controller from New York State, and this is a 20-page study that was done not by any conservation committee or group, but by simply the state controller's office that is looking at economic benefits with the benefit of that. If you look, there's quotes there that are drawn from the study on the left with the bullet points, and the orange arrow at the bottom highlights the fact that studies show that open space demands fewer municipal services than lands and other uses. So open space tends to generate more revenue, whereas land and residential use typically consume services of greater value than the property tax revenues generated by those lands. And so this study is looking across multiple studies and said it's a money loser for town to engage in residential land development. This is some additional data that's come from the American Farmland Trust. It was across 39 towns in 5 New England states. You can see across the bottom, Connecticut, Maine, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Rhode Island, and an average on the right. And the idea here is that depending on what kind of development, it shows whether it was relatively a loss to the town or a gain to the town based on the total economic impact. All of the dots that are blue, the residential developments, are a net loss to these towns. These are, again, taken from 39 towns across 5 New England states. The others that were net gain to the town were either in commercial and industrial development or working in open land. And we raise this as an important consideration that while we may get calculations from a developer or from certain people within the town that have an opinion about what the financial impact will be, we don't actually know many of those impacts, and their assumptions that we put together. This then shows what actually happens over time when you have a residential development in the New England area compared to when you have developments of other types. This is also supported by a study by Malone and McBroom, which is a town planning consulting firm that Woodbridge has used on multiple occasions. In 2014, they did a study looking at the Woodbridge Country Club at the time, looking at a standard single-family detached residential subdivision, which is the same type of development as we were proposing about. The municipal costs would include costs for services and schools, and they would be 58% higher annually than the tax revenues that would be gained. So again, in this study showed that residential losses would exceed benefits financially. And then finally, just looking at, well, what's the total cost of the town anyway? It's within 10 years, the property would be totally paid off. We've already paid more than half of it over the course of the last period of time. And that the remaining payments are only $45 per capita, $45 per paying taxpayer across the town. And if you look at the total payments each year, it's less than 1% of the town budget. It's a very minuscule financial component that we're looking at in terms of this land. And it does ask the question about, with a very minor financial component, whether we see ourselves ready to take away such an important asset. In sum, therefore, the proposal to the town, which was for a plan of a conservation easement, would still allow the town to gain revenue. The town would own the land, it would have 10 acres to generate revenues, perhaps through 55+ housing or other amenities. And so therefore, it in no way restricts the town economically in a complete fashion. There's a rich history that could be highlighted and valued. The land supports the environment, its ecology, and aligns with the goals of the town and the goals of the state regarding the preservation of land. It provides health, community building, and inspiration type benefits for the town. And as a financial impact, it's a residential loss. The residential development is a net loss to the town over time from all of the different studies that have been looked at. So in sum, we believe that the property is a place that's very definitely worth protecting. So with that, and Tim, I hope we have a few more minutes. We'd love to be open for questions.
We will have a few minutes for questions. I'll editorialize here from a personal statement. I think it's a wonderful pitch and well presented, Chris. Questions from the commission members?
Are there any expenses associated to the town for the conservation easement? I know for the residential development was highlighted the educational and other services that would be required. Does this proposal have any other hidden costs that we should be aware of?
There were no expenses included in the nature of the proposal, and to the extent that the land remained as open space as it is, there would be no expenses associated with it. But the town might choose to do some maintenance on the property. The Woodbridge Land Trust or the Park Association might have some interest in doing some maintenance on the property, but none of those things were considered as a part of the proposal, but certainly would be points of possible discussion. But those might have minimal costs associated with them, but no, the proposal had no costs associated with it to the town.
Well, the grant of conservation itself would take some legal costs, I assume. I don't know if that's the town lawyer that would do that, and it's sunk cost anyway, but to implement it would have some cost, Chris, I would think, but minimal in the scheme of things, it's minimal. Other questions from the commissioners before I have a couple, but I wanted to.
I have a question
first.
I have a question. What is the difference between open space and a park?
I'd say a park is a type of open space. Open space, depending on how it's designated, can be a park, as the Woodbridge Park Association has the Alice Newton Street Memorial Park. It can be the Ciarleglio playing fields, which is designated as open space and has soccer and other athletic facilities and a jungle gym and a play area. It could be the Fitzgerald property, which is open space and is being used for gardening and farmland. There's a whole array of uses. Its Massaro Farm is designated as open space, which is being used for community farming and community building in a summer camp. So there's many different uses for open space. It simply means that there would not be major structure, commercial or residential construction on the property, or industrial buildings or things of that sort.
Thank you.
Chris, can you explain how you had a slide on carbon sequestration and global warming? And can you explain the difference between the two proposals in terms of how your proposal would be different from a housing development and what the impact on global warming would be, just directionally? One
of the important ways to take carbon out of the atmosphere, and as I think we all know, carbon is in the form generally of CO2, which creates the greenhouse effect and causes for global warming because it entraps the bouncing sun off of the earth and therefore makes the earth warmer. If carbon is drawn out of the atmosphere in the form of carbon dioxide by plants and trees, it actually improves the problem of global warming. It reduces carbon in the atmosphere. So the very fact that we have open space with grasslands and trees and ponds, which actually have a lot of benefit in that way with the life in the ponds, reduces carbon. If we have residential property, which has houses that are using heating and electricity for air conditioning and cars from residential use, all of that is putting net amount of carbon into the atmosphere and therefore is contributing to global warming. And so it would change the balance of the property from carbon sequestration or reduction of global warming to carbon production or increase of global warming.
I see.
Chris, do you mind if I just elaborate a little bit on the question about open space?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Open space is not only undeveloped land, but a big component of it is also accessibility to the public. So all of the land that the Woodbridge Land Trust and Park Association has is open to the public. So private land would not be considered as open space. So one of the benefits of this is that we're providing so that the people within the town will have access to the land and can enjoy and use it. I just wanted to add that.
So would people still be able to hike on the land and
Absolutely.
And go sledding and that kind of thing?
Correct.
Okay.
And Chris, can I just add to your carbon input and climate change? Enough, Will. Also, there's this whole idea of embedded carbon within all of the buildings. And development that would be in there. So we're talking not only is there, carbon emissions due to the operations of those facilities when they're there, but everything from extraction, fabrication, transportation, manufacturing, constructing, decommissioning, all of that entire life cycle of anything that's being developed there goes to the carbon footprint.
Yes, thank you.
Other questions? Then I just had a couple. Excuse me. Uh, How restricted do you envision the grant of conservation would be?
Let me take a brief crack at that, but Bryan or Chris, you may want to speak to it as well. I think the intent was that it operate, as Bryan was saying, as a open area for the public use, and that it would be designed for the enjoyment and the engagement of the public as space that has, a beauty to it. It could have recreational aspects to it. So the actual details of how the open space would be used, I think, would be worked out with the town, and the town would still have latitude to consider recreational or open, enjoyment opportunities. But Bryan and Chris, you may want to add to that.
Well, Chris, that's absolutely correct, and it depends on really what the use of the land is for. Now, the Ciarleglio property, when it was donated to the town, when the town purchased part of it as well, it was really designed for recreational purposes. And with Mazzaro Farm, the Mazzaro brothers really were interested not only in agriculture, but also in education. So they wanted an educational and recreational area. So this is how we determine. Now, Elderslie, we have a grant of conservation restriction on it, and we keep it as a forested area pretty much. And there were questions at one time, well, could we tap the maple trees? Could we do different things? There are a lot of ways that and we would like to keep that. I think the Conservation Commission as well would like to keep that pristine. We'd like to keep that with walking trails and to keep it with the glacial erratic and everything that we love. We actually own the property with the lodge where the 3 judges were in that area. So, I mean, we design a grant of conservation restriction to be a document that would benefit the uses that we're looking for. And as a land trust, our responsibility is to be a separate eyes and ears to watch the property, to make sure that it's being conformed properly and to make sure that it's being protected as written in the conservation easement.
And the restrictions are established when the grant of conservation easement is established.
Correct.
And so to be specific, more specific in my question, would you envision that you would allow, and the presentation talked about the soils, the farm soils on the land, would you envision allowing haying or farming?
Absolutely. I mean, that's an agricultural use, which would be ideal. Okay. But one of the things that we didn't discuss, which I don't know, if it was mentioned before about maybe, other uses for the land that would be within that conservation easement. There would be, like it could be discussed whether or not a solar farm would be an ideal location for it. I mean, that's not, there are a lot of different things that can be discussed, a lot of uses that can be discussed for that land.
Okay.
We haven't placed any restrictions on that.
Would a golf course be permitted if somebody wanted to run a 9-hole golf course on the property too?
Well, I mean,
Yes.
if you're looking at it, if the grant of conservation restriction was written for recreational use and for athletic activities, when you have like on Ciarleglio, it calls for athletic fields. So that's part of that easement. So it's an appropriate, the point is an appropriate use of the land as defined in the conservation easement. We haven't discussed what would be in that easement. We haven't gotten to that point. We're just talking about protecting that land in perpetuity.
Okay. Chris, I believe I saw it in the presentation, but not sure I heard you say it tonight. There is an intention to resurrect this proposal with the Board of Selectmen at a point in the future.
if that becomes possible, I think there's an interest in continuing to put this forward. So yes, I think the Woodbridge Land Trust and the Woodbridge Park Association would like to put this forward again if that became possible.
Okay. Chris, I'd make just one point or send you away to look at something. And because I just don't know that I would understand the financials per se, and it may be right, but if the on the page that had the principal and interest adding up to a fiscal total, it appears to me there's a little inconsistency there. Most of the lines, principal interest equal the fiscal total, but there are some where it doesn't. I don't know if that's the way it should be or if that's not correct. Let's start at the bottom on that, and you can just take that away.
Thank you. We'll look at that. Those
Yeah.
were numbers that we got from the town, and I'll check and see.
Yeah, it looks
Thank
like
you
a
very much.
transcription error to me more than anything else. So,
Okay.
well, great. I really do thank the three of you for coming and joining us. And I think it's important for the Conservation Commission to meet some of the members of these two important organizations in the town that shares a lot of the goals, some of the goals that that we have. So we have goals in common, and as Bryan talked about, I was glad to hear him say he looks forward to working with us in the future. We have a history of working together, and I'm going to be talking to the Conservation Commission, not tonight probably, but at a future meeting about a case where we have worked together in the past. And so I look forward to working with both of you in the future.
Valerie, did you have a question?
Yes, if I may, would they be able to discuss some of the encroachment challenges that I saw on the paper? Please.
We have a series of a trail that runs between Pease Road and Beecher Road, and that was done at a time of development where houses were put in there, and the deal put together was there would be a trail running through the backyards or besides properties with a 25-foot easement in kind of a narrow strip on which the trail would run. And we have multiple times found large piles of fall leaves and downed branches dragged across that trail, where landowners next to the trail aren't either aware or don't respect the trail itself and consider it as a place where they can put the refuse from their cleaning of their yards. And the proposal currently for the property would be a 10-foot easement, which is even more narrow than a 25-foot easement. And our experience is it actually just runs into trouble with the landowners. I mean, Bryan and several of our members have been over multiple times to talk to people. I've done so. I went over one time where a guy was blowing all of the leaves onto the trail, and I asked him to stop. And it was an uncomfortable interaction because it's just not set up in a way to work. I mean, it's grounds for conflict. And so we just don't think it's a good idea to set up a situation where you have those supposedly public trails going through people's backyards.
In addition to that, Chris, as a responsibility of the land trust to maintain the trails throughout the town, we don't have a means of enforcing this. And so we're constantly dealing with these situations that are uncomfortable, where people are putting plantings or they're bringing debris, and it's just not enough room, not enough of a buffer in order to allow the passage along these trails. That's what we found.
So you're saying that these trails are only 10 feet wide? The setbacks are only 10 feet wide and you have problems with 25 feet?
That is correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's remarkable.
Okay. Well, I think we need to draw this to a conclusion. I just, as a final comment, I was given some given some credit at the beginning of having you to the meeting here, and I wanted to share that credit, at least share it, if not give it entirely to Paul, who suggested that we bring you to our meeting tonight. And Paul, thank you.
And I'd like to say, Tim, thank you so much for having us at your meeting. And thank you to the commissioners. And Chris Keevil, I thought you did a wonderful job. Thank you so much for the presentation.
I'll concur. Thank you again for inviting us to come, presenting what we are as entities, and allowing us to present our proposal to the public. We appreciate it.
Good
May
deal.
I add a little thing in here too, just to say that before this proposal and subject ever came up, the commission had said that they wanted to have you all, both of your groups, to talk to us, to ask you what we could help you do in your work as well as you helping us in our work. And we'd like to keep this partnership going.
I think this is a wonderful idea, and we look forward to working with the Conservation Commission.
So expect a return engagement.
Thank you.
Sorry, Chris. I didn't mean to step on you. All right, very good. We'll move on to our next agenda item, which is public comment. Having received no public comment by email, then we will quickly deal with that item. And next up is approval of minutes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of February 17th, 2022? Typically, the chair doesn't make the motion, so anybody like to?
Those are the minutes drafted by Barbara.
Yes, and they were sent out in the package.
I second the motion. Oh, I have to make the motion first.
You are going to make the motion, and we'll hopefully have someone second it.
I'll make the motion.
Okay.
We approve the minutes.
Do we have a second? Sharon's seconding, I think, by her hand raising. Thank you, Sharon.
Yes, I second.
Okay. And I, again, stuck with sort of a roll call here. Any comments before we take a vote?
Right. There's a correction that needs to be done in the minutes. It has to do with the amount of money that we're getting from ARPA. And I had stated that it was $10 million. 10 million is the possible amount that a town can get. What we are actually getting is 2.6 million. So that'll have to be corrected.
Thank you, David. Kate, can you capture that for the correction?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Anything else? Okay, I'm going to call the roll as I think we're supposed to do during COVID times. So just indicate yay or nay as I recognize you, Barbara.
I approve as amended or corrected, I should say.
Yep. Diana. Diana was fading in and out, I think, with some childcare. Diana, are you present? We'll come back.
Yes, I'm present. I vote yay. Thanks. Sorry.
Thank you. Kate?
Yes.
Thank you. Paul?
Yes.
Sharon?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
I will abstain as I was not at the meeting, and the motion passes. Thank you. Okay. So the next item is chair comments and minutes to share something. My comments today, they border on the personal, and I hope you'll forgive me for taking a bit of a personal privilege in making them. As you know, last month I was unable to attend the meeting, and some days afterwards I took some time and I watched the YouTube video. It was somewhat of an odd experience for me, and a bit surreal. to be watching and not being part of the proceedings there. And it was frustrating. It was frustrating when I had information that I thought could help and no one else on the commission had. And I found it frustrating that no one listened to me as I talked over and over again to the YouTube channel. And I wanted to help and couldn't. As I continued to watch, though, I developed somewhat of a strange feeling that at first I had trouble identifying. It took me a while, but eventually I figured it out. It was pride. There was pride in the commission that was before me doing its work. The video doesn't lie. It showed me the interest, energy, and commitment that each of you had, that each and every one of you has for the mission and the goals of the commission. And I was proud of you. Watching rather than participating gave me perspective. I was proud of you individually and collectively as the Conservation Commission, and I wanted to thank you for your work and your service. I look forward to what we're going to accomplish in the coming months. And Sharon, whatever trepidation you had when I told you that you would have to sub for me and chair the meeting was completely unwarranted. You did great. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
Moving on to something else I learned watching the meeting. It seems to me I caused confusion in at least one area, and it cost you some effort last month. It concerns the agenda, and I wanted to clarify my practice so everyone knows going forward. Typically, I send out the agenda for comment at least a few days before I submit it to the town clerk for posting. At that point, it is a draft agenda when I send it to you all. The agenda I send to the town clerk's office, typically on the Monday before the meeting, along with a list of materials for the meeting, sometimes it's called the package, is the official agenda for the meeting. It is typically slightly changed from the draft. As this agenda is posted by the town clerk's office, and since it is posted publicly, it sets the expectation for the public as to what items and in what order the items will be addressed. During the meeting last month, I saw Kate's surprise that the Trails Challenge was still on the agenda when she had asked me to remove it when she reviewed the draft agenda. And it made me realize that not everyone was using the final agenda, and that perhaps the process I was using was not clear to everyone. So you may have noticed that this month I added the word draft to the agenda that I sent out for comment. Maybe not, but I'll try to remember to do that going forward and remove that word draft when I send it to the town clerk. Hopefully, by doing this, I'll avoid some confusion going forward. So for instance, today, if you printed out the agenda and you're using it to track today's meeting, and it says draft agenda on the top, you grab the wrong one. And we really should use the one that's with the package that's sent to the town clerk. I hope it's clear, and I'm certainly open to any suggestions to modify that process if anyone has a suggestion. Okay, if not, I guess I'll keep the floor and just talk about the shalls and mays. Was sent out last month, and that wasn't the first time, and it was in the package today. And the reason I sent that is many meetings ago, Paul, it may have been even before you joined us. I had mentioned that I compiled this list, that I'd gone through the state statute and pulled out the responsibilities of the Conservation Commission, and I put it on the agenda because I had promised at the time it first came up, when I mentioned that I'd done it, that I would. Somebody was interested, and I promised I would bring it forward, and this is it. I did my best to be faithful to the statute, but I was translating from paragraphs, sentences, to a bulleted list. I may have lost something in translation. I hope not. The document speaks for itself. I mean, there's nothing there that we need to take action on, or I think that the commission needs to do it this point, except to just keep it in mind. I have a little further comment on it. I think, except to say maybe it gives us some guidelines for what as we think about those things we should undertake. One thing I did want to note is there's a shall that says we should keep an inventory of open space. That's something we currently don't do. And I've asked about that. And the commission per se doesn't have an inventory of open space. And it's not clear to me what the mechanics are. The town has one. There's one that exists in the plan of conservation and development, and probably in the open space plan as well. But definitely in the plan of conservation and development. And the mechanics of how that's done is not clear to me. I believe it's the assessor that's the source of a lot of that information. But it's not something that I think we need to do anything about right now. I think as when we pick up and get involved with the plan of conservation and development next year, 2020, well, maybe it'll start next year. I think it's due in 2024. We'll figure out how that's done in concert with the other people working on the plan of conservation and development. Any questions on the shalls and mays?
Was that addressed to me?
No, I just,
Okay.
to anyone that I may have buried the shalls and mays, but if there are any questions, we can ask them. Otherwise, David, I think you are, and I don't see any questions. So David, I think you're up.
Okay.
Hey, David, I did have to interrupt before you get started. We do have call your attention that we have a topic on the Merritt Avenue and inland. It'll be, my plan was to comment on inland wetlands there. So perhaps if you have comments in that area, maybe you can hold them to that topic and we can do that at the same time.
All right, there are a couple of items of general interest and some items directly related to your commission. There's going to be a budget hearing, a preliminary budget hearing by the Board of Finance on April 18th, and residents are encouraged to have public comment there. The Housing Opportunity Study Chairman, Dominic Thomas, advised the Board of Selectmen to suspend action with Arbor Haven until his draft report is presented to the board, and the board agreed. So that's on hold. That report will probably be in sometime in April, or if not, in May. The Board of Selectmen approved the proclamation in support of the people of Ukraine. The board also approved adding Woodbridge to the pollinator pathway, which was part of a 4-H club project. The ordinance committee will be convened to evaluate CUPOP's suggested no littering ordinance. We have a state ordinance, but CUPOP wants one specific to Woodbridge. And Eversource has returned to trim along the power lines. So their stated goal is to establish vegetation not exceeding 3 feet of maturity in the area up to 40 feet from the transmission line. Anything which is going to be 15 feet or under at maturity that's existing, they will leave. 100 feet out from the power lines, they want to remove anything which will be higher than 25 feet at maturity. And they're going to meet with the town. They're going to have a public hearing, and hopefully we'll avoid what happened last time. And I think this is something that would fall under your venue, under your auspices, under your aegis. And that's all I have.
David, could you elaborate on that last comment?
Last comment, yeah. So
tree clearing, yeah.
Tree clearing, yeah. There's, and this is a thought that I think you had as well. Perhaps the trees that are going to be cut should be marked, and people should have a chance to weigh in on that. Now, last time what happened was a tree cutting crew came in, they had some instructions, and they cleared whatever they thought they should clear. They also wound up clearing trees on private property, which they didn't have any right to do, and that caused quite a commotion in town. So we'd like to avoid that.
Well, as I understand it, that their easements, these are the high tension power lines in town that I'm sure you're familiar with. They run through the town behind Jacob, and then through the JCC and further up north in town. Some of the land is owned by Eversource, and some of the area that needs to be cleared is on, as David said, is on private land, and the power company has easements onto the private land. There are zones of clearing, and it struck me, and I guess I sent you the note, David, along with Betsy Ciarleglio, that after she had contacted me, that the pitch that was made, or the pitch that I was forwarded, did not seem to convey, and I think it came from the power company, did not completely convey the policy that they have for clearing those zones. And so it seemed to me what happened last time, there was clear cutting done throughout all the zones where there are, as you mentioned, restrictions that are put on, but it's too late to claim that somebody should not have cut down certain trees because they were not going to be too tall when they grew, and they were a certain amount away from the power lines. After the fact, it does no good. So I don't, and having said all this, I don't know who's got to take action with the power company to prevent that from happening. I don't think that's the Conservation Commission, but I don't know who it is. Does Betsy have a plan to go out with?
My understanding, Tim, is that the first selectman and whoever the tree warden is with the town, they have a community relations specialist with Eversource that they work with.
Okay.
I just don't know who it would be for Woodbridge, because that's not typically their territory. So the requirement would be, right, I guess the action that would need to be taken is that the first selectman go through their community relations specialists to emphasize the message about their tree cutting policy, or policy on private lands, and then I believe that they go and they identify the trees that are a problem, and they are supposed to notify residents in writing before any tree clearing action is to be happening.
Can I ask a question? What's the rationale for cutting down a 25-foot tree if it's 100 feet from the power lines? I don't get that part of it.
Yeah, I think it has to do.
Excessive, doesn't it?
I think it has to do with sparking, but 25 feet, 25 foot high, 100 feet from the power lines are acceptable.
So, and Paul, trees, even though where they stand can still fall and obstruct vehicles from getting to the places where they need to go. So if power lines are overhead, if they fall down and then all the trees in the surrounding areas are down, crews have to work, day and night to just clear a path to get utility vehicles back to the areas where they need to do the work on some of those, some of those power lines, even though it may be like, oh, a 20-foot tree, that's not going to fall down on a 100-foot pole.
Right.
You're right. The chances of that happening are slim, although with the microbursts frequency that they're happening, they could be happening more often. But the reality is the obstruction that it can cause on the way to those locations.
I see. Thank you.
When Betsy contacted me, she did it and stated that she wanted me to be aware, the Conservation Commission to be aware. Perhaps because, we have, I think partly because we have trails in the area, partly because we think we may want to expand trails in the area. It's part of what the Greenway extension may encompass, and the timing may be such that once it's cut, it'd be helpful to us. But I will follow up with her and get the latest and a better understanding of how the town's pursuing this. We have at least some interest.
The other
in
question I would add to that, Tim, if you could ask her to ask them for what their replanting policy is for anything that they remove, what they either replace it with or replant elsewhere in its absence.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for David?
I just had a basic question for anybody. The high tension pathway, shall I say, how far out from the high tension pylons and wires do those pathways go in general? I mean, we see the swath going down anywhere where there are high tension wires. How wide is that from the pylons and the wires? Does anybody know? And is this right of way beyond that?
Yes, Barbara, I think to answer that question precisely, because I don't have it in front of me and I don't have it in my head to repeat, I will send you what I sent to Betsy that comes from the tree cutting policy for Eversource and defines exactly what you asked, how far out these areas are.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and I'll send it to everyone if you're interested. All right, next item is the discussion of the WPA, the Land Trust Country Club of Woodbridge proposal that we heard about just a few minutes ago. And I would say the floor is open. Paul, I guess I'm going to put you on the spot. If there's any, I know you wanted to make sure we had this item on here. Anything? I mean, we may have addressed everything during the presentation, so that would be great.
Oh, is there a specific Paul, you're on mute. Is there a specific action that they're looking for us to take? No.
I didn't hear them ask us to take any action. The state of they made their proposal. They made their proposal. They didn't make this pitch. The pitch is recently constructed, as I understand it. And they are hoping to be able and that's the state right now. And as you heard Chris say in answer to response to my question, they're hopeful to have an opportunity to resurrect it.
And I also, Tim, can I speak to this just for a sec?
Sure, Sharon.
I think that those two organizations feel like it's too good an opportunity to just let go by, and it might be a way to help educate other people as to this option that occurs, because it got shut down pretty the shutting down of it was expedited before a lot of people heard about it. So it might be useful for people to know that it's a viable possibility.
Yeah, it's a wonderful educational presentation. I thought it was very well
the
done.
presentation was very well done, and I think it would benefit the other boards and commissions in town to hear it also. It was unfortunate when they gave the first proposal to the Board of Selectmen, they had technical difficulties and you couldn't hear or make out what they were saying and what the presentation was. So I know we've spent a lot of time on the Arbor Haven proposal, and other boards and commissions have also. And I would encourage them to go out and talk to the other boards and commissions and present it. I was also struck, frankly, by some of the issues that we had identified in the Arbor Haven proposal, that they independently had come up with, some of the same issues with the Valerie's issue with the connection to, the pathways being too close to the houses, some of the financial concerns that we raised, the carbon sequestration issue that Diana raised. It just kind of struck me that some of the things that just initially occurred to us as being issues in the Arbor Haven proposal, they identified that also and were able to compare what they were proposing to what Arbor Haven was proposing. I just thought it was a very good presentation.
Yeah.
Thank you, Paul. And also, I'm thinking that there's about 30 or 35 people who are members of these organizations who have worked on this and are willing to really stand by it. And it's something for the town and other commissions to think about, because that's actually a fairly large number of very, active and responsible citizens. And I'm sure it's not the exhaustive number, but it's the number that are part of those two organizations that have put a lot of effort into trying to figure out a way to have the town both benefit and keep the open space open. So I'm hoping that they'll be able to publicize, let other commissions know about it.
I guess the trick is, what's the right timing? Right now, any action on the Country Club of Woodbridge has been put on hold until the return of the housing proposal. And so it may not be foremost in people's minds right now. So I think those organizations are going to have to figure out when's the right time to make the push, get in front of the other commissions.
I think that's a good point, Tim. I think that time,
even in the way that Chris.
I think it would be interesting to see a financial comparison between the two proposals in terms of what it would cost the town to leave the land as open space versus what it would cost the town to develop this Arbor Haven proposal. I had the opportunity in reading through this material before the meeting. I read through an analysis that Arbor Haven had submitted to the town about the financial benefits of their proposal. And I was really struck by just the gross errors in it and the complete misassumptions that they had in their financial analysis. It was striking to see that they would put forward a proposal that had such blatant errors in it.
And that those errors haven't been scrutinized necessarily by the Board of Selectmen in a way that would.
Well, that's the shocking part, is nobody's questioned just the crazy assumptions that they've had in there. I mean, they talk about tax revenue on one slide, and the next slide that they show the same unit that they have tax revenue from is going to sell for $40,000 or $50,000 less than what the tax revenue slide shows. It just, it's just super sloppy.
I'm curious, David, have a response, any insight you can share with us?
Well, first of all, I take exception to what Paul said. I've been fighting those numbers at every opportunity. The real issue here, I think, is that the first selectman is very interested in this project because she feels it would be financially beneficial to the town. And I've tried to convince her that her numbers are wrong, and she's sticking by her, by her beliefs. I think eventually, unless Arbor Haven pulls out, and I see no reason why they would pull out at this point, this will go to referendum. And then it'll be left to the, to the voters to decide what they want to do with that property. So I think the more factual information can get out there, then, the better informed the population would be to vote appropriately on this issue.
It's interesting you say that. I'm thinking about the fact that the housing proposal has been put on hold. I think that is the opportune time because people are aware of what is happening. And even though it's put on hold, it's sort of off looming in the distance. And so I think this would be the time where you have people's attention, you have a captive audience to start getting that information out because it does take a little while to build the swell for the wave.
Yeah, I think we have the additional problem that with COVID and with not having in-person meetings, there really hasn't been the the widespread education or the widespread interest by people like we had when the other proposals were put forth.
Mm-hmm.
I think the interest probably is coming forward, though. I know innumerable people who changed their plans today to listen in on this meeting because of the proposal that was coming out, and they wanted to hear it from the people that had made it, et cetera, et cetera. So meetings were changed, et cetera, to listen to this proposal because it was known publicly that it would be presented to our meeting. So if they can get that proposal around to other meetings, there will be a lot more people involved and thinking about it.
It just seems like the Board of Selectmen just haven't done their due diligence on this. It's, it's upsetting just to read through it and see all the mistakes and errors in it. And it doesn't seem like they're willing to listen to other ideas or other approaches.
Without having attended the previous Board of Selectmen meetings, I would be hesitant to lump them all into the same category for or their same opinion, if you will.
I guess I don't mean to say all the Board of Selectmen, but enough to a majority of them, I would say.
All right. I think we should probably move along to our next topic. Thank you, David.
I'm sorry, can I just ask real quick, Tim? So, if these two organizations have brought forth this idea that they want to consider bringing this proposal forward again, is there a point in time at which our commission considers endorsement of?
I think when they settle on the timing, I think that's when we have that discussion. I mean, to endorse something that's been rejected and then is not active or even trying to be put back before the Board of Selectmen seems to me to be premature.
Okay, I was just curious.
I mean, that's my opinion. Now, to your point, should those two organizations be trying to build the wave and starting to get before some different boards and commissions and build some momentum, even though we're still waiting for housing and whatever that's going to be proposed, and you may have those two different proposals. Yeah, if they do that, and then that wave will build, and then there's probably a time when we do have that discussion. The next topic is the Merritt Avenue open space opportunity. I did join the Inland Wetlands Agency with their site visit last evening. Wanted just to back up for a second. One of the items that we were waiting for before we finalize what our ask would be for open space as part of the subdivision was a hydrologist report. The hydrologist report's been mysterious. And I asked last night as when I attended the meeting, commission members, and there's some expert reports that have come in, but they have not, as I've read them, not been specific to the wetlands in that upper area, other than to say that there are some wet spots and wetlands caused by mostly overflow from the Wilbur Cross Parkway and the blocked up drainage. Be that as it may, I wanted the commission to know that we shouldn't be waiting for a hydrologist report. Afterwards, I listened to the Inland Wetlands Agency meeting, and the point of most of the point of the visit to the site was to look at these wetlands that are mostly on state property and to look for evidence of the vernal pool that had been raised. And I listened to the meeting last night, the full meeting, the applicant's expert stated unequivocally that there's no vernal pool there. So that part that I sent in an email to all of you, again, the application's expert says there's no vernal pool. That wasn't completely accepted by one of the Inland Wetlands Agency commission members. 3 of the commission members, though, stated that they accepted that expert's finding on the vernal pool. So it is still a somewhat open issue. The agency moved on and decided that to determine the development's impact to wetlands, they are going to bring in an independent expert, if you will, arranged by the Inland Wetlands Agency. And so they'll bring their own expert consultant in and ask that question to that person: what are the specific impacts to the wetlands in that northeast area, the area that we were interested perhaps in looking at as open space, if it would be helpful. They hope to have that done by their next meeting. Their next meeting happens to be, they usually meet on the 3rd Wednesday of the month. We usually meet on the 3rd Thursday of the month. So hopefully by the time we meet next, we will have a more definitive answer as to the wetlands and what the impact is from the development and on the vernal pool. I think the expert will comment on that also. The other item of importance to the commission in terms of the open space that we would get is that since we originally visited and looked at maps and said, oh, open space could be along the river here, and you might remember that there's a detention basin that was planned. It was planned when we went out and we were told roughly where it was. It's on the plans. There now has to be, because of some, I think, and here I'm a little shaky, but I think it was a realized regulation. Apparently the regulation was there, but it wasn't, nobody picked up that it needed to be enforced in this case. But there needs to be, because of what material that's being removed from the site, there needs to be a compensatory drainage area. And so the drainage area that's going to be added is to the east of the detention basis on that's the Wilbur Cross side, and that compensation area will be a shallow grass-filled area. And what it means for us in terms of open space is it's not just like we wouldn't want to take ownership of the land that the detention base is on. We probably wouldn't want to take ownership of that land and it will narrow down. That the space we were looking at was going to be narrow in the beginning and then fan out towards the Wilbur Cross. It'll be narrow for more length towards the Wilbur Cross and then fan out. So best I can do, I don't have maps to show you tonight to what that means. I think what I'd like to propose is that we look to get John Paul Garcia, if he's available, to come to our next meeting. And given that the inland wetlands will have their expert and we'll have impact statements and know what's up in that northeast area, then perhaps we can, with John Paul's availability, so you can ask questions of the experts rather than what I just told you, we can build that out and then perhaps we'll be ready to, with a recommendation or what our request will be as we go to planning and zoning.
Tim, can I ask you a question? Who
Sure.
advocates for the homeowners there that complained about with some of the earth movement that there was water in their yards and flooding in their basement that they didn't have before? Who protects them? What town commission or authority is supposed to protect the existing homeowners from having their yards or basements flooded from this work?
I would think that they would go to their recourse would be to go to the in building and enforcement officers in town as one, because they should be the ones that enforce practices that are on this building site and if they're being followed. Secondarily, I would think that the inland wetlands would have interest if they're because excess flooding would have impact on wetlands, which they know are bordering partly on and then bordering the area. So, but I think it's the enforcement areas. David, I would turn back to you if you want to comment. I don't feel expert in that answer.
No, I think that's exactly. I think that's exactly right. I mean, Christine Sullivan is the enforcement officer, and inland wetlands, of course, has an interest in it. Now, at that meeting, one of the things that was mentioned was that the water comes down from the north, and all those houses are north of the proposed building site. And they said that it wouldn't, the houses would not have any impact because the new houses being built would have no impact on the houses already existing there because those houses were upstream of the water flow. But if you're saying that the folks in the area are now getting flooding in their basements that they didn't have before because there's excavation, then that, that's a different situation.
Yeah, that's what they told us when we were out there.
The water table there is also exceedingly high, so that their basements are actually below the water table. So they have a bad situation there in terms of flooding.
The other question I had about the proposal too is we had asked Chris about the parking situation, and she mentioned that there wasn't inserted in the new zoning regulations, there wasn't a new charter detail of what was required for parking. And again, just looking at the layout there, it just seems like there's too many things trying to be squeezed into a very small area, and there's just not enough parking. If you look at the map of the area, just not enough parking.
Well, there's one garage for each house, and then there's a driveway in front of each house. So I guess they have provision for 2 cars for each dwelling.
Yeah, but what happens when you pull the car out of the garage? Where do you put the car that you just moved? There's just not enough room. It's just, I mean, I look at the map again, David, and you'll see that there just isn't enough room. So, I mean, I know it was an oversight for the Planning and Zoning Commission. They didn't include a table on parking, but that seems like that should be corrected before this proposal goes in front of them so that they can make sure that we don't create a worse problem for the people in the area.
Any other comments or questions on the Merritt Avenue for now? I mean, think getting John Paul next meeting seems like the right timing?
It'd be good to understand the map.
Yeah. Okay. I'll ask him to come back. I mean, map's going to be hard on, the size of your computer screen. So, but we'll do our best. I mean, he's made minimal modifications from when we got the big paper maps, but this compensation basin overflow area is one of them. Well, in fact, I don't even think I saw it on the map, the newest map he had, but he will explain where that is. So I will invite him.
Tim, don't you have hopes that we're going to meet in person next time?
Yes, good point, Barbara. I was thinking that, and I think even at the inland wetlands last night, it was stated that excuse me, I'm wrong in that. While I was watching the meeting last night, a scrolling banner across the bottom or the top said that something about in-person meetings starting in a week. That's not an official announcement, as usually looking forward to hearing something that in a week we can meet. Agenda item is preserving trees during development. Barbara was due to be away. I'm pleased that she was able to join us. But in thinking that she'd be away, we had chatted during this last week about next steps. And I believe, Barbara, we're in concert. And I think if now that you're here, you'll let me know if we're not in concert. But Barbara, this is something that you've been championing. Should we just jump into subcommittees, or do you want to bring something else forward?
No, I think that is the next step.
Okay.
I had an action item on the last time we discussed this, and I was supposed to find out what Westport had done. And I spoke to the tree warden in Westport, and he said there's been talk about instituting regulation in town, but he doesn't believe that it's actually occurred yet. So I'm going to follow up with their planning and zoning chairman and find out what they've done and if they actually have one. The tree warden didn't believe that they did yet. So.
So, we had Stephanie, the town clerk, came and visited with us and talked about subcommittees because it became obvious, and some of us have talked, and different meetings, subcommittees have been mentioned. And again, talking to Barbara, we thought it'd be appropriate to move along the tree clearing item that we form a subcommittee. And so I wanted to bring forward a motion to do that tonight, to set up the charter. And so Barbara and I have discussed some wording for that. And so in this case, I will do the opposite of what I said earlier, and I will read I'm going to make the motion, and we can discuss. If it's seconded, we can discuss. So I move to create a tree clear cutting subcommittee of the Woodbridge Conservation Commission, comprised of 3 people, to develop recommendations on this topic and return them to the full Woodbridge Conservation Commission for review and possible adoption to forward to the Board of Selectmen. The subcommittee will sunset upon adoption of a motion to send a recommendation on tree clearing to the Board of Selectmen, or failure to send the matter back to subcommittee, or by dissolution by the Woodbridge Conservation Commission. So as a motion, it needs a second. Sharon, I think I heard you. I think I read your lips. Yes. Sharon
I second.
Seconded. Thank you, Sharon. And discussion.
So as the person taking minutes this month, can you send me the text from that? I was able to get most of it, but not all of it.
But Kate, I apologize. I had sent you that last evening, I think.
Oh, okay. All right. I'll
Perhaps
pull it up.
perhaps it, I think it was last minute, and it may be good for you to search for that email real quick. Well, I don't know that you did. Well, if you can type on that to make changes, that I did it for that purpose in case there were changes that you could just annotate it more easily. If they're not wholesale, if they're wholesale, that's a different matter.
I would like to bring up the fact that perhaps in lieu of what Stephanie said, that there needs to be a time set on this. I don't know whether that is necessary. And I don't know what other
Well,
people-
yeah, I heard her say that. I'm not sure I'm smart enough to say how much. I mean, we can set goals for ourselves, and certainly we can extend the time. I mean, that's always possible. So if we want to make a statement, how long do you think, Barbara, it would take to do this? And then we just put that in as an additional sentence.
This was a question. It wasn't asking
Yeah.
to have done.
Yeah, and
Whether we feel there needs to be a time set, and I would prefer not to set a time due to the fact that everybody on the committee, I am sure, is extremely busy, and we don't know how long it's going to take to just as Paul mentioned, what he did what he said he would do, and now he finds he has to go further and do more. It might take more time than we think.
Yeah, and I, my thought would be that people on the committee will be motivated, that, hopefully people get on subcommittees in areas of interest, and so they're motivated. The subcommittee is going to try to move forward as quickly as they can, and the complexity of the task and their schedules will dictate how long it takes. And that subcommittee is going to be coming back to us as a whole. Periodically, we'll probably have these items on the agenda for some update, every month, maybe every other month. And so I don't feel compelled to have an actual return time unless we have a deadline for something. So I'm in agreement with you. I'd rather leave it open.
Good.
Any other comments?
Well, I think it's particularly premature to put a deadline on it, but maybe in 3 or 4 months, we'll have an idea that, and then we could add a deadline, like by November, we hope to have a proposal to be able to send to the Board of Selection. But now I think it's premature because we don't even have any idea what it's going to entail to enact this.
Yeah, I think the subcommittee can probably as they think about it, they can figure out how long it's going to take them. Now, let's remember the subcommittees can meet on their own schedule. And they can meet as often as they want. They can meet once a week. And so the timelines aren't the timelines that we have on the commission meetings. And they can work as individuals.
Tim?
Yes.
Are we considering other subcommittees right now, or is the proposal just for the tree clearing?
We are considering just the tree clear cutting subcommittee right now. There are a couple other subcommittees that I've envisioned that we might consider tonight. And I'm sure there may be other subcommittees that people generally might think would be good for us to have, and those we can start to talk about, maybe member comments.
Thank you.
Okay. So if there is no other comments on this, I'll bring this motion to a vote. Again, you yay or nay as we go through, and Kate, I'm attempting to use the same order of people. I should have said that to you at the beginning, but so please announce your vote, take yourself off mute, and Barbara?
Yay.
Diana? I don't see Diana on the.
She left. She had to go.
Left.
Here we go. Okay. Kate,
Yes.
Paul,
Yes.
Sharon,
Yes.
Val,
Yes.
and Tim is a yes. Thank you all. Next is membership on the subcommittee. And it's 3 people. I think I think last time, Paul, it seems like you're working on this. I mean, was this something you wanted to continue and be a member of the subcommittee?
I'm glad to help out.
Yep. And Barbara, I'm assuming that you're going to continue your interest there.
Absolutely.
And then I've lost it. I thought last time someone else expressed interest, but I've lost the detail. So between do we have anyone else currently interested? Okay. As I said, I like people to have interest in things for the committees, the subcommittees they join. Sometimes we are going to have to draft people, but Barbara, why don't we leave it right now with yourself and Paul, and I'll pass it by Diana, see if she's interested, and we'll go from there. And if Diane's not interested, I'm certainly glad to help too, because I've done a little bit of research on it. But I would only do that if Diana's not interested, or Kate, Sharon, or Val don't think about it and decide they're interested either. So tree preservation, just writing a note for Diana. And I think we're done with that. The next item is the trail challenge update, next steps. So Kate, I will give you the floor.
I have no updates. I see that this is on the agenda, and I know that, Tim, you're very interested in forming a subcommittee on it, but I would, in the effort to not dilute all of us too much, I don't know that we should have like 3 subcommittees going at once. I'd like to kind of see one get off the ground. And I'm kind of gassed out on this project. So, I mean, unless someone was very passionate about it, I put a lot of time and effort into it in January of last year. And
yeah,
it is not sparking joy for me at this moment, unfortunately.
Okay. No, and all right. And I think it's going to take that spark of joy to make it a reality. And so if this is not the right time, and as you say, I mean, and I don't know that anyone else has, that's currently on the commission, has had time to develop that involvement in it to take it right now. And if I'm wrong in that, the other commission members can tell me. I think we can put this one on hold and pick it up at another juncture. Any other thoughts about that? Okay. Yeah, Kate, obviously the thought on the subcommittee was to make sure you didn't have to carry this alone. That's not fun. So we'll put this aside for now, and we will move on to the next agenda item.
Tim?
Yes.
I don't know if this requires a committee, but I would like to volunteer to identify other parcels of open space in Woodbridge and to bring that forward at the next meeting.
You can certainly do that, Val. I don't think anybody would stop you from doing that.
Okay.
Valerie, can I ask you to hold that thought for one more topic and bring it up? I think it has a tie-in with the Greenway extensions.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Great, thank you. So on the available open space grants, I heard this again has been thrown around for a couple of meetings, and then I heard last meeting, as I listened, there was some discussion about the grants and trying to figure out how to start with grants. My thought on this was to take the bits and pieces we know about the existing grants and assemble them together in one place, sort of as a tracking tool, a go-to tool that would allow us to know when our deadlines are for grants. What are the grants we know of? What are they appropriate for? So just and I sent out and maybe I will share this again. So bear with me a second to see if I can share this. No, this is not the right one. I'm sorry, this is not showing the right one. There we go. Okay. I had just gone through one of the grants I knew about, and I know about some others, but haven't taken the time to do it. And I went through and tried to think about what would be important to know about each of the grants. It's just a draft, and at this point, it's a thought. But I wanted to propose that we form a subcommittee to coalesce all this information and end up with a tool that we can use that would really help us know some of the important things about each of the grants and the timings and maybe how much information they desired and therefore how much effort they were going to take. And so that's my thought. And I drafted a charter for that particular subcommittee. And the way I'm looking at it is the way I'm thinking about it is that subcommittee would just be chartered with putting this together, and then that subcommittee would disband. That we're not forming necessarily right now a permanent grants subcommittee. I think grants take a good amount of work from what I understand. I have no experience with grants. So I'm not bringing expertise. I think a few of the people on the commission do have some experience, and hopefully they can lend a hand about what's important to know about grants. This was just my swag at it. But that if we pull this together and we know some of the available grants, then we can start to think about what grants we should be pursuing. And at that point, if we're going to pursue a grant, then maybe you reassemble a few people together as an effort to do that grant. And the next grant is not necessarily those same people. And that we share the burden that way and we learn that way, that maybe the people that are going to do a grant, we have some people with experience on it and some people with little experience, but who would start to learn. But the starting point to me is still, what are the grants? And then what are the timings? So I guess I'll stop there for a second and see if this, as I said, I prepared a charter and kind of prepared to make a motion to establish that, but let me stop there and see if this makes sense at all to people if we want to go down this road. Any comments, or is it getting too late?
It's getting too late. I think we have to start thinking about ordering these meetings in a way where we're not trying to do so much heavy stuff at once. So, I mean, I'm amenable to this idea, but I don't know, does it really need to be its own committee?
Well, it's a matter of who's going to do it? If someone wants to grab it and put it together, I'm happy to do that.
The other thing, Tim, I think as far as grants are concerned, they're ever evolving and they're ever appearing and so forth. I mean, one can make an immediate list of 4 or 5 or 10 or whatever the number of grants that would be appropriate for us, but you're always finding new ones and different ones, and then you come up with a reason for wanting a grant, and you look for a grant that fits that reason.
Yeah.
So I'm not so sure that we need a list of this type. It's
So
not.
so if we had a need, and we wanted to, accomplish a purpose, how would we know what grants are there?
Well, there are many places that you can look for grants with specific purposes.
Yeah. And I guess I should say, why would we do that every time? If we know that, and I see this, I think there may be half a dozen, I mean, less than 10, certainly the grants that are applicable to what we do that are going to be in our bailiwick initially. And I don't think this is a long list, but why have to go out and find them each and every time? If we find the ones that are most applicable and we can add to it, then it's a ready reference. And if we, it's a good place to know, well, when is the grant due? It occurs every year. When is that? And it's just a quick reference tool.
Well, and I'm not objecting to that. I'm just saying, I don't think it takes a subcommittee to do it. It takes a person to go,
Okay.
to go and make a listing of the grants available for the purposes that we might
Okay.
want it.
Okay.
Tim, I think it's a great idea, actually, because just even what you've written now, it seems like we could develop some expertise around, doing a title search or describing conservation, climate, and recreation, and we could have stock, paragraphs and stuff. I just don't feel, I would definitely be the uneducated one who would need some guidance to even be at all helpful in that group. So if other people wanted to do it, I would take their direction with the skills that I have, but I don't feel like, unless someone with more knowledge than I starts the process, that I could add much.
Yeah. And Sharon, I'm kind of the same way. I'm not sure how well I did here because I'm uneducated. I've never done a grant. So I'm not sure even, pulling out this information, I've done it correctly. Part of the reason, I guess, and Barbara, I don't disagree. One person could do this if they were knowledgeable, but we'd have to get someone with experience with grants to do it.
Tim, I just want to add, it's really easy to find these grants if you just pick the topic that you wanted to apply for a grant. You have a specific purpose, and then you look it up. They'll all come flying out at you. They really are very easy to find.
Okay.
And for instance, I looked for one for a grant for changing a municipal fleet from gasoline to electric. And I found an awful lot of grants. Now, none of them were actually applicable to the specific thing I was looking for, but I found a number of other ones that were related. So they're really not hard to find. And then there are categories of grants which are recurring, like there are these LOSIP grants which come out every year, and those those vary in amounts, but there's certainly a source of funding.
Okay.
And there are some others, but they're fairly easy to find. They don't hide them. They want people to get these.
Are they fairly easy to understand?
I think so. Yeah. I was looking at this particular grant for conversion of municipal fleets, and what I found were some money available to convert municipal trucks from diesel to electric. And they had some specific programs, like they would waive excise taxes for the purchase of those vehicles. And then they had money for police cars, but that grant had dried up. So, they keep making these grants. And if you search periodically, you'll find them.
Yeah. Okay. Well, in view of the late hour, why don't we table this? Everybody can let it ruminate or can ruminate on it in their idle hours, and we can revisit it next month and see if we want to put together a quick reference list. To me, the reference list just saves you doing that research over and over and over again. But others may think differently.
Tim, I
That's
agree.
fine.
Tim, I agree. Sorry, I lost my picture. I agree. Revisiting this when we're not so burnt out might bring more enthusiasm and more good ideas as to how to do it.
Yep. And then if we want the matrix, we can decide if it's a subcommittee or someone wants to volunteer to do it on their own and bring it back to us. Great. All right. So we'll move on. Table that, and we'll move on to the Greenway extensions. And the key thing is here, I want this had come up in conversation I had with someone. I do not even remember who it was, that perhaps the way to attack the Greenway extensions in the beginning is to have a special meeting. That is, it's a large topic and an in-person meeting where we can once again revisit the maps, which I have new maps since we last talked last summer up in the center of town. And we can really do the history and the background. I found more information about what our Greenway is, which last summer we didn't even know precisely what the Greenway was. And so I wanted to see if the commission wanted to take the time and dedicate one meeting to that one topic, make it a special meeting, get together in person, and then from there, see where we're going to go. And at that point, you can either work it through regular meetings and specific topics, or subcommittees if that's necessary. So
I think if we're going to take on the Greenway subject, it would be good to have somebody like an Amy Morella or somebody that was involved in the original establishment of the Greenway to kind of walk us through the history and what it involves, and maybe give us an overview, so we all kind of have at least a baseline understanding before we get started.
So Paul, two comments on that. One, as Sharon knows, I have talked to Amy Morella about coming and visiting with us. And she originally was slated to be here this month, but she wasn't able to. And that's okay, because it worked out and we needed the slot. And I am due to give her a call post this meeting to see if she's available. She has some availability challenges, and I was going to see if she was available for next month. So my plan was to have her at next month's meeting, and that was my next topic on my agenda in closing. The second part of that would be having talked extensively to Amy to pick her brain about the history of the Greenway. She can talk generally about it, but she doesn't have great levels of detail. And I'll leave it at that. When she comes, we can get some information from her. What I have developed and what I wanted to share with everyone is the information that I've developed over the last 6 months or more, that I've been trying to figure out what is the Greenway and where it goes, and then how do we think about doing extensions to it. The timing on that, I think it would be more it would be more beneficial to the commission members if we did a focus session on the Greenway itself to try to understand it, and then asked Amy questions based on that and what we still don't know or understand, and see if she can fill it in. So I think a special, a meeting before we had Amy, if we're going to have a special meeting, great. If we only going to do it at a regular meeting or next regular meeting, then I would put Amy off perhaps until after we've had that background established.
I would like to move right now that we do a special meeting as soon as possible, with the caveat that it is in person. And have Amy come to that meeting and do it all at once.
I would be in favor of it. I mean, I know a little bit about the Greenway, but I think I could absorb what she has to tell us and what you have to tell us, and start to make progress on it. At least personally, I think I could absorb both.
I appreciate what Barbara said, but I do want to talk about some possible visuals that may help us, that may require Zoom.
Well, if we met in person, it would be helpful, I think, to have a big map where we could stand around the map and look at it, that sort of thing. So doing it in person might be helpful. I mean, I guess we could do it by Zoom, but
I think it's necessary in this particular situation. And if we have to have whatever visuals we have, if it's in PowerPoint form or whatever, it can be, especially if we're in person.
I think if any member of the committee wishes to have it on Zoom, that has to be an option.
sure. Why not?
Why not? Sure.
My reasoning was not for COVID. It was, but I appreciate you saying that. It was just basically for better visuals.
Yeah, valid. When we meet in person at the town hall, we will have a capability to use a PC and a projector and so we will have that available to us. I think that accomplishes what you were after.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So is there objection? Any people have objections to the special meeting? I'm getting a sense we're going that way. That people are okay with
I
that.
made a motion that we do.
Oh, no, I didn't. Anybody want to make a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. My discussion on the item, as Barbara made the motion. Barbara, let me ask a clarifying question. I think, prefaced by a statement, I think it would, I see this as a full meeting, going to take 90 minutes, 2 hours maybe. I think it's asking a lot. Kate, no, you don't want it that much. Well, all right. We can, I think it's a lot to ask Amy Morella to attend that length of meeting. So we might be able to structure it to have her come in at the end. But I truly don't think, I think we're better off getting the understanding and then meeting with her. So if would really like to have her at the same time, I would say we should just, have her just for a slot towards the end.
And that is, I did not intend that she attend the entire meeting when I said that. I feel that she should, I think if she comes to that meeting, we will accomplish all that we need to accomplish in the meeting and not have to have her at the next regular meeting. We will have more time to do other things that we need to do at the regular meeting.
Yeah.
So if we invite her to come at the end, after we've gone through everything that any of us know, that's fine.
Yeah, I think that's going to make Kate unhappy because it's going to extend the special meeting.
Well, we have
So I
to,
don't know how to,
I think that, let's ask Amy. She may, she may have an hour and a half to devote to it, and she might want to hear what we're thinking so that she can respond to it more effectively. So let's put it in her ballpark of whether she'd like to be a half-hour slot, an hour or 45 minutes into it, or if she'd like to just be there as we're cultivating our ideas.
okay, probably good suggestion, Sharon. Okay, so I will send out a calendar, the calendar tool so we can figure out when people can meet.
again, I made a motion, but I did have the caveat that it be at a point as soon as possible, but at a point where we can meet in person.
I think actually you did,
Before that.
I think you did say that, Barbara.
Has anyone seconded that?
I did.
Yes, Paul did.
Okay.
Kate, you're good with the motion? Okay. So I guess any other discussion before we vote on that?
No.
All right, so Barbara,
Aye.
okay, Diana is not here. Kate,
Aye.
okay, Paul,
Aye.
Sharon,
Aye.
Val,
Aye.
and Tim is an aye. So the motion passes. I will again set up the calendar, but knowing, I'm going to wait and I will call town hall to see if I can get a read on when we can meet in person. If we find a really nice day, we can do it outside, maybe even, but I think inside would be better still at this time of year. So with that, the last item, and I guess it's past 10, so we should be very brief. We've already talked about Amy coming. That was all I had on my list.
Valerie mentioned, Tim, Valerie mentioned earlier, I added in the notes to this section that she was going to bring forward open parcels to the next meeting.
Great. And Val, I asked you to defer something and I just remembered that. I've lost what it was.
I think you wanted to align that with your grant proposal.
No, it was something I wanted to align with the Greenway
green space.
extensions.
And it was Valerie finding all of the
Open spaces.
open spaces.
Right.
Okay. And I think my comment was on that was going to be that it would be great to do. It would really align very nicely with the Greenway extensions. So
Can we
maybe
bring that up during the special meeting to figure
Yeah.
out that as part of the Greenway? Does that work for you,
Yeah.
Valerie?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, that those give
We'll
it.
put that
provide
on
us
the agenda of
targets.
the Greenway.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll just be part of that discussion. Any other comments?
I
Our
move
next
to
meeting-
close the meeting.
Yeah, our next meeting is April 21st. Just note that. There's been a motion to adjourn the meeting. Is there a second?
I second. that.
Second.
Any, I'll say, going all in favor of that one. Anyone opposed? I think by assent, we have adjourned the meeting. Thank you all very much. And we will move on. Have a good week, everybody.